Hello YouTube clique. Today I want to give you a peek at a project I have been working on, a playing card set themed to the 4 album eras from the Dima storyline. I started this project in March of 2023, when it was first announced that the 4th album in the lore would be the last. Since there are 4 eras and 4 suits in a playing card deck, I have assigned each era to a suit, starting today with diamonds for Blurryface. My current plan is to do 5 videos on this project, one for each suit, and a final recap segment showcasing the jokers, backing, and packaging, as well as any tweaks I make to the designs showcased in the first 4 videos. I am scripting and compiling this video to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Blurryface era, and I'm sure there will be more new details I will want to include after the band's celebration concludes, and I will showcase those in my recap video. Much like the protagonist of Redecorate, I hope that you'll forgive the use of text-to-speech in this video as I was really rushing to get this finished in time for the anniversary. For the backgrounds of the cards I settled on a format of a pattern, confetti colors, and skeleton keys plus band logo. Since all of these elements were unique to each era thus far, I'm showcasing this aspect of the cards first, since it is common to all cards of the suit, but you may notice that some early versions I show in my work in progress videos may have white backgrounds. That is because I didn't add the backgrounds until I was about halfway through the project. I added this to give the cards cohesion within the suit and to make it easier to tell which suit they are at a glance, since some of the more complex designs tend to obscure the legibility of the shapes. For Blurryface, the pattern I used was a tapestry of song patterns arranged in diamonds to fit the suit theme, and the confetti colors were red and white at the beginning of the era for Blurryface Tour, and all red for Emotional Roadshow. The aces for this project represent the album covers, and for Blurryface I went through a lot of different options before settling on this current one. I wanted it to be simplified, and also highlight the way the image resembles the band logo when blurred. Now we have our first number card for track 2, which is Stressed Out. I began by applying the song's associated pattern to the diamonds, while the bikes in the music video are 3-wheelers. Since the card is a 2, I simplified them into 2-wheeled bikes. The interior of the 2 wheels feature Easter eggs to the lyrics, such as a treehouse and ladder, which is mentioned in the lyrics and is a callback to Forest from Regional at best. There is also a playing card stuck in the spokes, as a reference to Slowtown. I like adding references to other songs and pieces of the lore, as you'll see in my designs going forward. For the rocket ship lyric I also added the UFO used in the Takeover tour visuals for the song. While this isn't the most traditional of rocket ships, it reappears a lot as a visual motif, so I wanted to include it. The beam of the UFO also forms the band logo with the playing card. I also added some detail with dollar bills to the tree leaves. This might be too detailed to print legibly, but at least I will know it's there.
There was a moment where Tyler said, at least we'll know.
Now you know.
To add some asymmetry to the design, I added fire to one of the tree houses as an additional reference to Forest and the repeated fire motif. Maybe we can pretend the candle mentioned in the song was left unattended and caused this fire. I also switched one of the UFO and card logo allusions to the rabbit and dog imagery used in the visuals, since Heavy Dirty Soul didn't get its own card. For Ride, I also used the song's associated pattern, which doubles as the forest imagery also used in the music video. The music video also plays a lot with the idea of light and dark, and the ending showcases these big circular light grids that resemble the 9 circles that represent Blurryface. We also see the sort of circle grid imagery in the live visuals for the outside on the Icy tour. I also added the iconic sunglasses from the music video, pairing Tyler's with Josh's. Tyler's have certainly become more iconic with their unique shape, but I wanted to represent both. The number 4 is highlighted in the song The Judge with the 4 lights, and so for fairly local I focused on the lit-up microphone featured in both the video and live performances. The texture on the microphones is Heavy Dirty Soul, which was often mashed up with fairly local during live shows and doesn't get a card of its own. I also included some snow, like in the music video, which was also in Heavy Dirty Soul and has been a repeated motif throughout the storyline. With Tear in My Heart, I experimented with adding blood spatter to the edges of the diamonds. I also experimented with some floral imagery to tie into Tyler's kimono from this era, as well as car imagery from the lyrics, but ultimately decided against it. I applied the song pattern in black over the buildings from the music video to represent the visual effect of the buildings cracking and crumbling. I then altered the blood spatter to gradient to black to represent the Blurryface paint. For Lane Boy I used the skeleton keys of the hazmat suits that were showcased in the live visuals for Heathens. I also added some car imagery with the wheel from Heavy Dirty Soul. I originally labeled the hazmat keys with text, but I really don't like using text in my designs, so I opted against it. I also added more floral imagery with the kimono, adding flowers to the top of the keys' heads to resemble the way Tyler would put the kimono over his head during live performances. Since I'm using the skeleton key imagery on this card, I also added the skull from Heathens, which is comprised of skeleton keys. The judge uses a lot of galactic imagery in its live visuals. This also ties into Josh's alien key. I mean, he is name dropped in the song after all. I also combined the compass E into the key design to incorporate the lyric of not being good with directions. I once again experimented with florals largely due to the galactic floral imagery we got from the Level of Concern ARG, but decided I already had enough floral on the other cards. Instead I added light bulbs to represent the 4 lights lyric, and the Icy Tour door to tie in with the door being referenced in the lyrics as well. For another reference I added the UFO to this card as well, which can also be a callback to March to the Sea from Self-Titled. As much as I don't like text, I also added the Stay Out from Routines in the Night as an Easter egg on the doors as well. Doubt's association with the lore has always been fascinating to me. In Dima it is the tallest center tower. And yet Ristro hasn't really gotten much focus like Nico, Kians, or even Sakarver and Lisden. The live visuals for Doubt also showcased a skyscraper cityscape, almost like an early conception of the towers of Dima. To represent the markings made on my skin lyric, I fashioned the light patterning on the skyscrapers to resemble Tyler's arm tattoos. Being an 8, I also included some spider imagery into this card, since spiders have 8 legs. Spider imagery was used throughout the Blurryface era, with it being Tyler's Twitter header, him tweeting a spider to tease the album, and also Blurryface tweeting the same image of a spider. It was also showcased in the live visuals for Ode to Sleep and Hometown during Emotional Roadshow, and has continued in the visuals for Shy Away during the Scaled and Icy era. This song is also the first ever mention of the bishops, which felt important to represent, though this lyric was originally not a reference to Dima. It is instead a reference to Dante's Inferno, which is even more interesting now with the Inferno imagery during the Clancy era. At first I wasn't sure how I would represent the bishops without dipping too much into post-Blurryface lore, but upon rewatch of the Cancer lyric video I noticed that among the props used in that is a chess set, so I refashioned my skyscrapers to resemble chess bishops. With the demo for Doubt being re-released recently, the skull mask has become more associated with the song. This skull mask was originally worn for performances of Heavy Dirty Soul, not Doubt, but it has sort of been retconned into relevance here. I altered my spider design to be more skeletal to fit the new theme, and I will probably end up making some similar adjustments to a lot of these designs after whatever happens for the 10th anniversary. I also alternated black and red diamonds to further resemble a chessboard. For the 9, I arranged the diamonds to resemble the album cover instead of the traditional playing card arrangement. Since Hometown doesn't get its own card, I added the Bones Campfire to the center of this one. I originally added the Sleeper's Eye to this card since the first lyric used in those images was from Polarize. I ended up moving the Sleeper's Eye to the next card, which I will discuss there, in favor of adding tentacles from the ERS visuals instead. These visuals were used from the mashup of Polarize and Message Man, so I incorporated motifs from Message Man as well, namely the black Blurryface ink. Message Man has a strong connection to the Blurryface ink, both with the ritual from the Scaled and Icy era, but also with its pattern somewhat resembling an ink blot test. There was also this tentacle hoodie Tyler wore to the MTV Emmas in 2015. The Emotional Roadshow visuals for Polarize also included this flashed arrangement of the 9 Blurryface circles, with Sakarver and Nico missing, and holes in the corners. I tried to reference this with the arrangement of the brighter and darker red diamonds on the card. I also added a book to the Hometown Campfire to represent the Cancer lyric video. While this isn't technically from the Blurryface album, its imagery is still a part of the era and still important to include. The most obvious visual for track 10 was obviously the TV. We see TVs pretty often later in the Dima storyline, namely in the Psy Live stream control room as well as the Level of Concern ARG. However, An especially interesting use of the TV imagery to me was the smoking TV set from this photo shoot during the Scaled and Icy era. This song is also the only number card song to be represented that is not on the album cover, and is instead a Sleepers track, hence me moving the Sleepers eye imagery from the polarized card to this one. I also wanted to highlight the Goner birds, since they were important and not really used anywhere else, and Goner was another Sleepers track. The TVs shown in the Scaled and Icy live stream control room actually had eyes for the Dematronics logo, which further reinforced the sleeper eye imagery in association with the TVs. I also added fire to some of the TVs in reference to the burning TV imagery from the level of concern ARG. Now we get to the face cards. Josh will be my Jack, since both have the initial J. He and Tyler will have a standard face template for all of their respective cards in each suit. I first added his baseball cap from ERS, which pairs with his yellow hair from the later part of the era. I also added his red hair to the other side, split by his crossed drumsticks. He would often cross his drumsticks over his face for pictures. And this also sort of resembles his torchbearer tape later in the lore. For the shirt, I mimicked the shirt from the Stressed Out music video but with the stars swapped out for the alien and skull print from his drum kit, which was also used in the Clancy era. Josh also had a beard at the beginning of the era, which has so far not made a comeback, making it unique to this era. The tank top worn by the yellow-haired side is the one from HDS, with the little bit of wear added for detailing. I also added the glowing eyes shown in the Judge Live visuals which reappeared again in the level of concern ARG. Continuing with detailing the face, I added the injuries from the deleted scene of the fairly local music video. I also removed the red eyeshadow on the yellow hair side, since that wasn't a consistent part of his look and only appeared in some of the music videos. The bandana from Fairly Local was also added, since the face bandana would later be really important imagery with the torchbearer, and it's interesting that the first ever music video since the start of the lore starts with a shot of Josh with a bandana covering the lower part of his face. The bandana itself is interesting since it covers the same part of the face that is blacked out on the bishops. I pulled the bandana down to the neck on the card however, since with it being a face card I didn't want to actually obscure the face. This is also why I didn't include Josh's spooky mask from this era. Heathens wouldn't technically be a part of the Blurryface album but it very much fits into the era to me, so I also included the tattoos from that music video. Josh also got his Tyler tattoo during the Blurryface tour, so as a tiny detail I altered one of the Heathen's tattoos on his neck to include Tyler's name on it. But I doubt that will be visible on a print, or even really in this video.
But just know it's there.
Having two Joshes on one card is kind of reminiscent of the drum battle from ERS, where the on-screen Josh's head exploded at the end. I didn't want to completely remove the head but I added some blood spatter to the background on one side. He also had white nail polish as a tiny detail during this era. I originally didn't intend to include the pink hair since I assumed it was just the red hair that had faded. I don't want to add things that are just a logistical issue or a personal choice. They have to be an intentional detail to be included. For example, the drumsticks not being red at the beginning of the era isn't a lore detail but rather just a matter of them not having gotten a sponsorship from Zildjian prior to the blow-up of Stressed Out. But upon further inspection and review of interviews the pink hair was indeed dyed that color, not a faded red. This is especially interesting in retrospect considering Tyler would also have pink hair later during Scaled and Icy. I frosted the red hair with a pink gradient, so that it can represent both shades. Josh's in-ears during the Emotional Roadshow were also red and pink, which further reinforces pink as a relevant color. He also had green skull in-ears earlier in the era, but since this bright lime green hasn't been particularly relevant since, and since the skulls require much more tiny detailing to be legible, I just kept to the ERS designs. Lastly, I added this flare torch from this photo shoot they did in their Ride music video outfits, which has more relevance now with his character in the lore being called the Torchbearer, with the Jack and King being Josh and Tyler respectively. The Queen card is left as a sort of free space for whichever new characters are important in the era. For Blurryface that's, well, Blurryface himself. I originally used the standard depiction of Blurryface that we see on the cover insert and his Twitter profile image. But since that was already used on the Ace, I decided to showcase some more unique depictions of him throughout the era. One that really stood out to me was the masked figures from the video played before Polarize at ERS. These masks are white with black openings below the nose, similar to the depictions of the bishops later in the story. Another important depiction of Blurryface, and technically his only canon appearance, is the hooded figure from Heavy Dirty Soul. I wasn't sure how to depict this at first, but I added a seat belt to separate the two sides of the card. Technically the figure in the video doesn't actually wear a seat belt, but I'm including it for symbolic purposes. I guess road safety isn't canon in Dima. I also really resonated with this depiction of Blurryface from the 2016 AMS, where he is a skull comprised of cameras. Originally I depicted this by just having the camera in his hand, but I decided to go all in and recreate the camera pile to clarify the reference further. Finally we have the king, K for Clancy, though he wasn't quite Clancy yet, so I guess it's K for Kit Tyler. This one also uses a common template for all 4 iterations across all 4 eras, and I also used a trench image as reference like I did for Josh. The most important clothing item to include was of course the red beanie. I originally added ears to it to showcase the dog/rabbit imagery with the duality of 2 Tylers on one card, but ultimately decided it was too silly. The main outfit pieces I chose were the red ERS suits, combined with the Ride music video coat and white Fairly Local jacket. The Ride coat is interesting foreshadowing since it's very reminiscent of the trench-era olive green Bandito army jackets. Fairly Local directly calls out wearing black, despite the music video outfits being almost entirely white, which I find represents a sort of duality. But I ended up swapping out the Fairly Local jacket for the blue jumpsuit, which was worn in response to Blurryface's cryptic tweet, since that felt more important. Heathen's yellow and orange felt important to include, since I'm including that into this era and it serves as foreshadowing for Trench's color scheme. I applied this as a color gradient to the suit collar, which in itself is interesting since the only distinction I could tell between Tyler and Josh's ERS outfits was that Josh's collar was black and Tyler's was white. I also added back some Fairly Local imagery with the long white sleeve, as well as this black armband he wears underneath the jacket. This armband is in the same position as his yellow armband on his Bandito jumpsuit, and also further highlights the black and white duality I mentioned earlier. This era also marked Tyler beginning to wear tape on his fingers, though it was just his index finger for now. While Tyler almost always had the Blurryface paint during performances this era, there were a few times when he would forego the paint on his hands in favor of just drawing the logo on them instead. He still had the paint on his neck when he did this, however, almost like the performances during Scaled and Icy where he would start the show with the paint only on his neck and not his hands, as well as when he is captured by Nico in Jumpsuit. In another reference to Jumpsuit, he has the same cut on his nose for that music video and Heathens, which I added alongside the blood around his mouth from Tear in My Heart. I also added the XS over the eyes from Blurryface's tweet and profile image teasing the Heavy Dirty Soul music video, as well as the red paint over his eyes used in this promotional image, which resembles the red tape over the eyes from the start of the Clancy era. Similar to Josh, I added his in-ears as well. Interestingly, his in-ears from this era showcase the same symbols that are on his forearm tattoo. Finally, I adjusted the hand position to resemble this strange motion he does in both Overcompensate and Fairly Local. We still don't really know what this parallel means, but hopefully we will get some more details on that with the anniversary and the finale of the story. This concludes today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and if you did, please rate it accordingly and go ahead and subscribe to see the rest of the series. My current goal is to strive for monthly uploads, though my busy schedule may get in the way of that. I also don't want this channel to become an exclusively 21 Pilots channel, as I enjoy making many different things related to music and playing cards. If either of those topics interest you, I hope you'll stick around and have a great rest of your day.